wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I have a hole in my stomach!
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Renee Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen. Hello. Welcome to She Became Visible. I'm your host, Renee Steelman, and today I have my co-host, Lila Tueller. She's going to be joining us in a little bit, but let me introduce you to our topic of the day. We are going to be talking about our journey. Lila is, I think she's a good 10 years younger than I am, but we both have had similar journeys because we both walked our path in a systematically patriarchal system that we belong to that helped us lead the way. And I think that's really important. It wasn't really about choices we made, good choices or bad choices, but it was about choices that were given to us. It's kind of like when, as a parent, you remember learning that you should tell your children, you can either go to bed happy or you can go to bed sad. Which would you like? Either way, you're going to bed. And so those are the kind of choices that we were given growing up in this fundamental religion, which is often called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But I prefer to call it the Mormon Church because that's what it was called when I was growing up. Now, first of all, I have to bring to your attention my crown. Do you see my crown? Okay, this is a crown of lapis lazuli, which is a crystal. I'm going to tell you about it. The lapis is blue. And it belongs to the brow chakra, if you're into chakras. And the brow chakra talks about mind, ideas, thoughts, dreams, and psychic abilities. I don't have psychic abilities, but anyway, that's what the crystal book says. Okay, let me tell you a little bit more of what they say. Lapis lazuli is a rock, cubic, and dodecahedral crystals and masses. Almost always includes lazurite, calcite, and pyrite. It comes from Afghanistan and Chile, and it is a healing crystal, a feel-better stone that brings vitality, wisdom, I need that, mental endurance, I need that, and creative expression. And it promotes natural gifts and skills and helps disorganization. I need to wear this crown more often is what I'm telling you here. So it's really fun. I just got back from the Gems and Mineral show in Tucson, Arizona, which they have every year. And this is where I got this crown. So I thought, you know what? It really plays into our theme for the day because doggone it, get your own crown. Don't wait for somebody else to give you the crown. Get your own crown. So that's our theme for today. So let me bring a little bit into what we're going to be talking about. So what would I have done? This is going to be a reflective journey today. We're going to talk about what would we have done if we had known what we know now. And I also wanted to start out by saying any of you followers or listeners, and I'm really hoping to grow my audience outside of people who have left just the fundamental religion of Mormonism. I really want to expand into those who have left other high demand fundamental religions such as Scientology, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Seventh-day Adventists, or any of the Islam, any religion that is very demanding and has a lot of rules, especially geared towards the female population. And this is a list of authors of books that I have read who have all left an evangelical religion, not Mormonism, not Seventh-day Adventists, not Jehovah's Witnesses. These are just good Southern Baptist, evangelical women who recognize the patriarchy. And so what I show this to you for is to encourage you to go outside of the ex-Mormon bubble and the Mormon bubble and find other women who have left high demand religions and see if you can connect in that way. Barbara Brown Taylor's, what was her favorite? Envy, religious envy, something about envy and religion. Anyway, she talks about her study of other religions as a teacher and how she taught other religions, and she began to be really envious of some of the rituals and beliefs of other religions, and it kind of helped her to leave her current evangelical system. Sue Monk Kidd, The Mermaid Chair, Dissident Daughter, just amazing. Rachel Held Evans' personal story of how she left her religion. And Reverend Carla, if you haven't found Reverend Carla on TikTok, find her. Sweet, wonderful, spiritual person. Actually became a ordained minister in a non-denominational spiritual something. You would have to watch her more to find out. But she spiritually leads people. She has not left her belief in Jesus Christ, but she has left she calls herself unchurched. And I love that. Brene Brown, of course, we all know, but she has such wonderful teachings, wonderful way to find values in life that don't have anything connected to those values. They're simply moral and ethical ways to go through life and find your own self. Riane Eisler has some fabulous things. And Martha Beck is interesting because she is no, I'll have to go back. I just finished her book, but I can't remember what she said about actually resigning her membership, but she was a former Mormon. Her father was Hugh freaking Nibley. I don't think that's his actual middle name. Her father was Hugh Nibley. Hello. He is worshiped as a god, okay? And she has some stories, which I remember hearing years ago, but I didn't believe her. I thought she was lying because I was a true believing member. When I went back and read her book with my eyes opened and I listened more to her personal story, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so believable. She has done amazing things. One of the other reasons why I didn't follow her for a while is she was a contributor, editor, bigwig with Oprah Winfrey's own book, her magazine, and as a journalist. And I kind of fell out of favor with Oprah after I kind of started to see her jumping on different bandwagons, The Secret, and that whole thing she got on for a long time. And I started to look at her daily TV show as you're just kind of going along to get along. And I kind of she lost favor in my eyes. So, but I went back now, read Martha Beck's book, Leaving the Saints, and it is amazing. Fabulous story about her journey. So anyway, okay. So let's, so moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about, I'm going to actually take this off because we're going to talk a little bit about why Lila and I are on the journey that we were on, but have now gotten off. So let me bring Lila on. So hello.
Hello.
Good morning. And I've had Lila on as my guest before, but I'm going to have her reintroduce herself because, like Martha Beck, she is the daughter of someone that had a lot of fame and respect and worship in the Mormon church. And as the daughter of someone with that kind of visibility, one of the things I admire about Lila is that she had the strength to walk away from a religion where a lot of people would go back and say, well, I knew it wasn't really for me and I couldn't go along with a lot of the doctrines, but my dad was a freaking apostle, or a general authority rather. My dad was a general authority, so I can't walk away. But Lila did. And so Lila, tell us a little bit about your story growing up, and also kind of, we'll get the subject introduced by you talking about choices that you made and why you made the choice to get on a certain path for you as a woman.
Okay. Well, I want to make a quick disclaimer because we all make choices, and there wasn't a gun held to my head. I made the choices I made. And so I don't want to blame anyone in particular. I want to highlight, a system that creates a pathway for women. And so so I was raised by, my dad was Hartman Rector Jr., and he was a 70. He was never made an apostle. But he was called when I was young. I was 7 years old when he was called. So we moved from the East Coast to Utah. And, I have several, I'm number 6 in my family lineup. So I have several older sisters and brothers, and all of them got married young and had huge families. And so by the time I got married, and I got married 2 weeks before my 19th birthday. So I was 18 still when I got married. I had seen my older sisters all get married and have lots of kids already. They hadn't finished their families yet, but they were, had up to 6, 7 kids. And my oldest sister had 8 kids. One sister had 5, one had 6. And then my brothers also, they had less. My two, anyway, I'll just say let's focus on the girls, because that's what I was modeling. My parents were converts, so they didn't have large families, but my mother had 8 children and adopted 1 more, so 9 total. So I'm looking at my family dynamic and all the kids and thinking, this is what we're supposed to do. And I was raised in the President Benson era, when he said that women's place was in the home, and that no success could compensate for failure in the home, and that our duty was to raise our children and not have jobs outside the house. So this was the setup. And when I was 18 years old, I met a guy at college. Well, we met just before college, but anyway, I felt like he was perfect for, what I envisioned, having a big family and being the stay-at-home mom, and he would work, and, that whole thing. So I did it. I did what I thought I was supposed to do, which was not graduate from college, get married while I had the opportunity, because you never know when that's going to come along. He had asked me to marry him, and so I did. And immediately, we started having babies, and I had 7 children. Mine were kind of spread out. But, I could say I want to blame the church for that. Of course, I had choice in that. Mm-hmm. But the stage was set for, this is the proper thing to do. This is what we're here for. This is our reason for being created, is because we're supposed to be mothers and raise children.
Right. And I think one of the things that's really important that you brought out was you were 18. Yeah. 18 is still a child. My granddaughter just turned 18. And I look at her, and her sister just turned 16. And I just said to them both, you're not married yet? What's going on here? What's wrong with you? Just joking. But I mean, as adults, we now look back on our 18-year-old children or grandchildren. We go, what the heck was I thinking?
Yes.
Yeah. But that was modeled, and no one blinked an eye.
No.
When I remember there was a family that had all girls, fabulous, cute little family when we lived in Washington State, and they had all girls. And just their bright, ambitious, cute little daughter goes off to college, exactly what you said. Doesn't even finish a semester, and she's engaged and married before she's even 19. Nobody blinked an eye. And it's worked out great. Her husband is very successful in his career. She's got like 4 kids or something. So when it works, or when you think it works, because we don't know we see the facade that everyone puts on when they attend church, and you think that's a fabulous family. Nobody knows what's going on in the 4 walls. But it works. It works in this system, and you were following this system. And when no one thinks that it's off, when everyone congratulates you for your choice at 18, what's wrong with that? How can you say, no, I'm not going down the right path, right?
No, I thought I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. And then, like you say, where you were at your family, the example had already been set for you. And as parents who chose to become, they were not born into the Mormon religion, they chose it. Then your mother said, oh, we are going to have more children now because that is the new learning I have acquired.
That's our purpose here, is to bring spirits, create bodies. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's amazing. So you get married, and I love that you said that, because I'm always fascinated by the people that I talk to that are like, well, I got off to college, I was engaged 3 times. And but in fact, I was engaged and had the date set for my wedding, and then I met so-and-so, and I'm like, I didn't even go to homecoming. How do you get engaged 3 times? I mean, that I've never, I never even dated. All right. But like, you go off to college, you're engaged 3 times, and I'm like you, I meet my husband at a church dance and he's really cute. And I'm like, somebody asked me to dance. Will you marry me? Yes, I'll marry you. It's like,
I don't know when anything like this is going to happen again. Lightning twice. Yeah, you got to jump on it, right?
Yes, exactly. So you tell me again. So you met him, and you're like, yeah, we should get married. So with the time between meeting him and him saying, "Will you marry me?" was how much time?
I met him in July before I started my freshman year at BYU. I was visiting my sister in California, and he was in her ward. And she had already decided that she was going to line us up. And I was staying with her for a week plus a few days. Anyway, visiting while my family was moving back to Salt Lake. Dad had just finished his mission presidency in San Diego. We're on our way back to Salt Lake, and I decided I'll hang out with my sister for a while. You guys go on to Salt Lake. I'm going to stay here. And so I started dating him there in her neighborhood ward. And then, he told me 3 days in that he had a dream that we got married in April.
Oh, not the dream.
And I was like, starry-eyed, but also like, wait a sec, I didn't have that dream. Are you sure?
Yeah. Somehow I missed that dream. I didn't have a dream. I had a dream, but Bradley Cooper was in it, not you. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, we'll see about that. It was a little fast for me, but he was very, he was Prince Charming, and swept me off my feet. And by the time I got to BYU, my freshman year, he didn't let me date anybody. It was him and me. We were dating. Yeah. And then he asked me to marry him in October. We got married in April. So it was, boom, boom, boom. It was pretty quick.
So did you finish your freshman year at college?
My freshman, yes, I finished my freshman year. We got married in April. So maybe it was just before. I'm trying to think. It must have been before it was over or just after. I'm not sure. Semester end. And then, I started school again, but I was pregnant and I got sick. I was so sick. And so I dropped out after that. So I went to 3 semesters of college and then quit and started raising my family, because that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you had 7 children. How old were you when your 7th was born?
Oh, I was 42.
Oh, so was he a surprise?
Oh, totally.
Why did I assume it was a boy? I don't even know if it was the child. Okay, yeah.
The last 3 were surprises. I only wanted 4 kids. That was my plan. Don't tell me. They know this. I've told them. Yeah. The last 3 were all surprises, and they're 5 years apart. Like, you'd think I would figure it out and do something, physically. Yeah. I asked my husband to do something physically. Yeah. You take care of that. I'm the one having the kids. You can get that thing done in an afternoon, in and out. Yeah. I got to go under the knife and go, Anyway, it kept happening. I had 7 kids. By the time I was pregnant with my 7th, and I'm 41 when I got pregnant, had him when I was 42. I was like, this can't happen again. This is killing me. I can't. Yeah. I'm too old for this, right? Yeah. And it was really hard. It was a hard pregnancy. I was in bed most of the time. And of course, they told me that I had a 75% chance of having a Down syndrome child because I was
Right.
older and all
Right.
those kind of things. But yeah, so I had it was very spread out for me to have my second.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly right. I did the same thing when I was pregnant with my sixth. I looked at my 9-year-old and I thought, this is not fair. This is not fair.
Yeah.
He is not getting the attention that he needs because my kids are close. My kids are anywhere from 18 months to 23 months apart.
Wow.
And he was an active little boy that got in trouble at school all the time and was always being disciplined. And I just thought, and like you, I have morning sickness. And so I have a pretty easy pregnancy, but the first 3 months, I just want to die.
Yeah.
And so I thought, this isn't fair. And I thought I wanted 8 kids, maybe 10, but I don't think I can do this, So I said the same thing to my husband. I said, I have natural childbirth. I don't even have an episiotomy. I'm not doing surgery. You go do surgery. He ran so hard. He ran to his desk and got the church handbook out and showed me in the handbook that it was not okay for men to get vasectomies. And I said, are you getting remarried? Is there some plans somewhere? Because are you having more children? Well, that's the way the handbook was written, right? It's like, look, men can procreate until they die, and you never know. Something might happen to your wife and you might get remarried. You hear that story all the time, right? I had 6 kids. She had 5 kids. We got together. We had 3 of our own. You hear that all the time in the church.
Yes.
And so again, I mean, I'm battling with Gabrielle Blair because she wrote the beautiful book, Ejaculate Responsibly. And she's agreed to be on my podcast, but dang, that girl is busy. She lives in France and we're having a hard time getting together. But the whole idea that men can create children daily, women can only get impregnated once or twice a month, but for some reason we managed to figure it out. And yet it is all our responsibility to figure out how many children but do it without any kind of birth control or anything like that.
It was in the day where there was no birth control sanctioned by the church.
Absolutely. This was Spencer W. Kimball and then carried on to Ezra Taft Benson and have as many children, and I remember here's how the patriarchy, and it could even be just my husband. I mean, the man's been in stake presidencies and he's been a bishop. And when I said to him, we were told to have as many children, he goes, nobody ever told us that. I'm like, were you there at the altar when we were sealed and they said multiply and replenish the earth? Or were you there when President Benson gave that talk? Well, I know the one talk I think he gave actually to the women, that one in 87, the talk he gave in 87.
Yeah.
But it's like, they don't hear it. They don't even hear it.
Because their body isn't the one doing it. So it's like,
yeah,
in and out.
Yeah. In fact, when I gave up going to the temple, way before I ever even thought, I didn't know anything about church history, but I knew the temple ceremony was wrong. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not asking you to go to God and ask a question.
Yeah.
Eve knew what she was doing, if you believe that story. And, he was fishing and she said, hey, I got the whole thing on what we should be doing. And he was like, I can't do that. And she's like, well, I'm leaving. So did you want to go? I guess, So, I mean, this is how I interpreted the temple movie, right? And I just said to him one day, I'm not doing this anymore. I said, when you go through washing and anointings, are you told to obey your wife or to listen to your wife or that you have to go through your wife to talk to God? He's like, no. I'm like, well, I am.
Yeah.
But because he's an obedient, believing person, he didn't even hear it. And that's, I think, what you and I are talking about is they think you're lying or that you're just a whiny woman.
Right.
50 years ago, we'd be put in a sane asylum because we were just, hormonal or whatever, because they don't hear it. They literally don't hear it or see it. And fortunately for me, I ended up having to have an emergency cesarean. And so I said, literally, while you're in there.
Oh, I wish you would have said that because I had one too. My number 6. Was it your number?
No, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, they didn't even have time to numb me or anything. They had to open with no anesthesia. That, let me tell you, that was traumatic. I don't down, so I couldn't even jump off the table, but I wanted to, and I was like, couldn't breathe. It was awful. But I should have had the wherewithal to say, I was too worried about my baby dying.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even think, yeah, while you're in there, tie my tubes. You know, it was like life and death right then.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I can't imagine. But yeah, they were like, we got to get this baby out.
Yeah. He said,
Wow.
are you okay with me cutting you? Because I need to get this baby out. What was I supposed to say?
Yeah. No, let me get a coffee. I'll be right back.
A moment. No, it was like wham, bam, pull, wrinkle, move this here, move that there. And the whole time I'm like arched off the table, freaking can't breathe. It was like when I watched Braveheart and they're disemboweling him at the end, I was like, I know what that feels like.
Been there, done that.
I was like, the poor guy, I can totally relate to his pain right now. So yeah, it was not a fun. My husband was throwing up. He literally turned white and started vomiting. I mean, it was like a traumatic. And then she wasn't breathing. So they whisked her away. I didn't even get to see my baby until an hour later.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was a trauma. I don't even know how I got off on that tangent.
No, but yeah, I was talking about how I had my tubes tied because I had emergency cesarean. Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And what's funny,
you please get that thing taken care of. Why is it always me under the knife? You know, can you do that one little thing?
Yeah.
I finally did after I was pregnant with my 7th.
Yeah. But yeah, and this is the issue, Lila, and this is where you and I are together. There's my children are a combination of millennials and Gen Zs or Gen X, I guess. And A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
I don't know.
I know, I never can remember. So they're a combination. Some of my kids were born in 76, 78, and 79. And then I've got the 80, 81, 83, 85. So they're kind of in that, whole thing. And I see these kids, and like I've interviewed a woman that this was so funny. They don't get it. These 40 something, 41, 42, they're like, well, women, I mean, we talk about a heavenly mother all the time. I'm like, no, we don't. Yeah. We do not talk about. Did you not hear the talk? Were you not in conference when I think it was, I don't know who it was. When he gave the talk about how we don't talk about a mother in heaven. Yeah, but because he talked about mother in heaven in conference, that means we talk about heavenly mother. And I'm like, wow, that was a huge circle, but okay, So when you say it said in the handbook, you can't use birth control. You're not allowed to do any kind of permanent sterilization. We were encouraged to have as many children. They go, well, they don't say that. They didn't really say like they did.
They did. Yeah. Well, my dad married us, and he specifically said, he read President Kimball's statement that, because I've been to many of my dad's marriages, and he says, he reads it word for word, and it says, it is something to artificially curtail the oh wait, gosh, I wish I would have read it before.
Let me bring this up on, see if I can. Oh no, that one's. Let me see if I can go to Kimball, because I've got Kimball in here somewhere. Let me find it.
You will reap disappointment by and by. Basically, he says, it's. Oh, wow, you got a lot.
I know. I love Mormon Think. They're so great. Okay, let's see what this. Can I read it? No. All right, let me see if I make this bigger, if I can see it. Okay. Oh, this is the Equal Rights Amendment. Deceptively simple language deals with practically every aspect of American life without considering the possible train of unnatural consequences which could result because of its very vagueness, encouragement of those who seek a unisex society, an increase in the practice of homosexual and lesbian activities, and other concepts which could alter the natural God-given relationship of men and women. That was Spencer Kimball on his position on the Equal Rights Amendment. And that was fun because I remember going to some of that. So I don't know why I didn't put his thing, but let me go back to Benson. Young mothers and fathers, with all my heart, I counsel you not to postpone having your children, being co-creators with our Father in heaven. Mothers who enjoy good health, love your children and have them early. Do not curtail the number of your children for personal or selfish reasons.
Yeah, we were selfish.
Selfish. Yeah. Yeah. And what's Heber C. Kimball have to say? Brethren, I want you to understand that it is not to be as it has been heretofore. The brother missionaries have been in the habit of picking out the prettiest women for themselves before they get here and bringing on the ugly ones for us. Hereafter, you have to bring them all here before taking any of them, and let us all have a fair shake. That was President Kimball about those dang English missionaries getting the cute girls before they had a chance to be,
my goodness.
Yeah, I love that. So that's when my husband was like, we've never been told that. I'm like, I know you fall asleep during conference, but you're a freaking bishop. Come on.
You know these things.
Yeah.
Yes. And I want to say, when we went through the temple, Renee, and I'm sure you went through before 90.
Yep.
We did all those icky things.
Yeah.
I don't want, you know what I'm talking about. And
yeah,
we also made a covenant that we would obey our husbands in righteousness. And then,
exactly.
Everything had to be done through the husband. There was no immediate, connection with God. It had to go through the husband.
Yep.
And the husbands, they didn't get that. They never, it didn't enter their brain. They're like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're in charge. Woo, woo. And they just don't realize what it's like to be the woman going through this, and having them say that we shouldn't artificially curtail the number of children we have doesn't affect them.
Right.
They get sex with or without it. It does affect. If we have sex unprotected, we're going to have babies.
Yeah.
And it's our body that's going to go through that. And it can be obviously traumatic.
Yeah.
That number 6, let me tell you, that was traumatic. And
I can't imagine the emotion having gone through that and then going, what if that happens again? What if I go into labor? What if they have to, did they do the 7th as cesarean?
No, I had him natural.
Oh,
but it was like, it was already scary because I thought he's probably going to be Down syndrome or something.
Yes.
And I was like, and my body was really hurting. I had preterm labor. I had to stay in bed. I was in a lot of pain. Nobody could figure it out. I'd go to my doctor's appointment. I'd be like shaking, I am so in so much pain. Can you fix? And I remember it was like 5 months along, and she said, you've been having contractions this whole time you've been here. I've been monitoring them. And I'm like, well, no wonder I'm tired by 3 p.m. and I want to go to bed. These are the things that women, these are just some of the things women go through in order to bring children into the world. And yet we're told by men, we're not allowed to curtail. It's our bodies, for crying out loud. And it's so unfair. It's so unfair that we have been ruled by men who have no clue. They don't even have monthly cycles. They have no idea.
Somebody made a fabulous quote. They were talking about the Pope has just come out with a sanction against surrogacy, that absolutely not. You should not be there should not be any surrogacy. And they said, we got to stop listening to these doughy white men. And I thought that was so appropriate. He's never had sex. They're not involved in childbearing. They're not even involved in child rearing, basically. But they've got the full command of our bodies, our health, what we do. And so let's go back a little bit. When you were at college, did you have a focus, something that you thought, I would really like to study, fill in the blank?
That's a really good question. I think at the time, because I was just so fresh into college, all I wanted to do was get my GEs out of the way, because I didn't really know what I wanted to be yet. I had a lot of interest in science. I still do. Art, those 2 things were my favorite classes. But I was trying to get my GE credits taken care of, because I really didn't know if I was going to pick a major, what it was going to be yet.
Exactly. And that's exactly the way most 18-year-olds go into college. They may even go in with a thought, I'm really going to go into, like, say, I'm going to go into pre-med. And then they get in there and they go, I don't like this. But that's your opportunity to explore and go, oh gosh, I really thought I really wanted to go into accounting, but I am loving this art class and I have such a natural talent. I'm going to drift over and change my major. This is the time. You've got these 4 years where you find yourself and you discover who you are and what your interests are. And tell everybody what you do now as far as with your art.
Well, for since 2008, I've been doing fabric design. So I design the designs that they print on fabric, on the computer. It's all digital. It started out with me actually painting, but now that it's gone digital, so I do it on a software program on my computer, and I love doing that. That's really my true love. I also work at other jobs because you can't make enough money doing it.
Yeah.
To survive anymore.
And you said as a freshman, you were interested in art and a lot of science and exploration. And at what age, now like you said, you've got your kids, so you're a stay-at-home mom. Mm-hmm. At what age did you go, I am loving quilting, I'm loving fabric, I'm loving this, art part of creativity? How old when you thought you really kind of honed in on what your skills were?
Oh, well, I was always doing things artistically. I mean, that's just who I am. I never stopped doing that. That was kind of my escape was to create. And then I think it was right around 2008 when my niece was living in the basement apartment of our house. She said to me, you know what you should do? You know how to sew and you're so artistic. Why don't you design fabric? And I'm telling you, I had one of those rushes from the head to my toe. Yeah. And I thought, what? Wait, what? And I said, tell me about that. And she said, I have a friend who's doing it. And she's not even an artist, but she's doing it and she's making money. You should try that. Oh. I jumped all over that. I called this girl that she told me. I said, give me all your information. What program do I need? What do I need to do? And she basically said, you need to get into the textile, the big trade show, and have a portfolio and show it. So I just did that. I snuck in. I wasn't even supposed to be there. It was to the trade only, but I got it with a friend who was going, and I shopped my little portfolio around, and I got 5 job offers the first day I was there.
Okay. How old were you? Right. When you're doing all this?
Let's see, 2008. I was born in 61. I don't know. What's the math? 30.
Okay.
30.
Let me look. Yeah. Okay. Well, I will figure this out with my brain and my computer. Okay. Because I think this is fascinating. Okay. So 2008, and you're born in 61.
Yeah.
So you were 47.
Oh, 47. Yeah. I wasn't even close.
Okay. But 47, you find and your kids are, okay. And so your kids were in 2000.
The youngest was 5 at that point. He would be 5 because he was born when I was 42.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had a 5-year-old at home. So you are probably like I was, where you're like, go to school. I got 6 hours to get everything in the entire world done. Right.
Yeah. I actually, while they're at school.
Yes.
Yes. That makes sense. Yes. Yeah. That's exactly what it was. But, we also owned a Color Me Mine, which was a ceramic studio, paint your own ceramic studio. Yeah. So I was working there with my little boy in tow. Yeah. And I really it was while the kids are in school, you got to get all your work done in the house, and I got to get my artwork going. And I also did it late at night. I'm a night owl, get everyone to bed, and then I would work.
Yeah.
Stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning. I mean, I killed myself for that.
Yeah.
But
it's amazing when I read and I hear, but you'll hear a lot of people that didn't grow up in the environment that we grew up in, and they'll say, Grandma Moses started painting at 62, and you're like, well, Grandma Moses probably didn't have 25 grandchildren that she had to help take care of. She didn't have, And I actually started, I didn't get it on my slides, but I started going back to the women who have served in the position of Relief Society General President throughout the church. Okay. And I know, is Camille Johnson, I don't know if she's still the president now, or she's the primary president.
I've lost a lot of touch with.
Yeah, me too. She is an attorney. She has 3 children. She actually worked in a partnership at an attorney's thing. And I'm like, how not? So 3 children, huh? Not 7, not 8. Okay. Yeah. But I even went back and looked at like Bathsheba Smith, and she was like a polygamous wife. Now, Julia, if you're listening, you correct me on this, but if I remember my reading, she was a polygamous wife and she had one child, but she was very good in medicine and she helped birth them babies. She helped a lot of people birth babies. And her and Eliza R. Snow, who was the another, I think right after Smith, Eliza R. Snow had no children. And even though she was a polygamous wife, she had no children. Her and Bathsheba were like buddies. And they would go all over. And I'm thinking they were the best girlfriends. They probably had so much fun because, you know, you have one child and you're the General Relief Society president and you're Brigham Young's your one, you know, husband. Then you and Eliza, you take off, you leave that kid with one of the other 54 wives and you go and do your girl thing, right? They probably had so much fun. And then the one underneath Bathsheba, I think she as well had like 2. And then when it got into like the 50s and 60s, then there was a few more where they had like 5 or 6 or something like that. But it, you know, so this whole idea that you can have your cake and eat it too is like, no, you can't have 9 kids and be the General Relief Society president and have a career and everything. It's not possible unless
really hard.
Yeah. Unless you give them to the other wives. Maybe that's why they thought, you know. And I remember one time sitting in a ward council meeting. I was the young women's president and I'm sitting there with all the people. Oh, I was stake young women's president. So it was a stake thing, right? And this one really young women's president, she's like, I am so sick of these women that are homeschooling their children. She goes, they can't get their visiting teaching done. They can't serve in a calling. They can't do anything because they're homeschooling their kids. And I was like, okay, I don't know how I feel about that. It's like, so they can't get their servitude, their free labor because they're taking care of their children, but they were told to have their children. I'm confused about that, you know.
Little double message going on there.
Yeah.
Double message.
So did you ever have time when you were like, you know, you go to this convention, you meet up, you connect with people and you think, if I could have found this love, I would have gone to textile and design school.
Yeah.
And I would have, gotten a career in textile design.
I would have had I'm totally self-taught. I would have had, you know, the edge on all these other people that are doing it have all gotten their degrees and they have, they've been taught how to use these programs like Illustrator, you know, Adobe products that I basically had to learn, just teach myself how to do this. And it was a lot of trial and error. And meanwhile, you know, I've got all these kids that I'm trying to raise and do the right things, you know, but it was a drive inside of me. I can't explain that. So it was like I had shelved myself for so long. It was like, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't shelve myself anymore. It was like, no, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Every fiber of my body is vibrating and saying, go for it. You have this talent. Why aren't you doing it? You need to do this.
Yeah.
I needed to. But, you know, I got some flack. I got some flack from my husband. Well, he was actually very supportive, but it was kind of like, yeah, you can do that.
As a hobby, right?
Yeah. As long as you get all your other work done.
Yeah, Cinderella. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not trying to talk trash on him. He was also a victim of this system.
Oh, absolutely. Let me chime in here. I want to show everyone, show my audience what Lila is talking about very clearly. Let's watch this.
Brothers and I were boys. Our mother had radical cancer surgery. She came very close to death. Much of the tissue in her neck and shoulder had to be removed, and for a very long time it was difficult, painful for her to use her right arm. One morning, about a year after the surgery, my father took Mother to an appliance store and asked the manager to show her how to use a machine he had for ironing clothes. The machine was called an iron right. It was operated from a chair by pressing pedals with one's knees to lower a padded roller against a heated metal surface and turn the roller, feeding in shirts, pants, dresses, and other articles. You can see that this would make ironing, of which there was a great deal in our family of 5 boys, much easier, especially for a woman with limited use of her arm. Mother was shocked when Dad told the manager they would buy the machine and then paid cash for it. Despite my father's good income as a veterinarian, Mother's surgery and medications had left them in a difficult financial situation. On the way home, my mother was upset. How can we afford it? Where did the money come from? How will we get along now? Finally, Dad told her that he had gone without lunches for nearly a year to save enough money. Now, when you iron, he said, you won't have to stop and go into the bedroom and cry until the pain in your arm stops. She didn't know he knew about that. I was not aware of my father's sacrifice and active love for my mother at the time, but now that I know, I say to myself, there is a man.
Okay. I played this for my husband, and honestly, he was like, and what? I'm like, okay, his 5 boys. He helped her so she could continue to iron. He didn't say, I'm going to show those boys how to iron.
Yeah.
I'm going to iron.
I'll iron
Yeah.
for you.
I will iron for you. No.
Oh, no.
I will buy you a shovel so you can continue to dig the ditches that I need every day. And also, that is bullcrap because I gave up lunch. Did you have to go to the cafe for lunch? You can't fix a sandwich, dude, and take it to work every day.
Yeah.
So, but
peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
That is a man. But that is the patriarchy that he honestly doesn't see it.
No, he doesn't.
He's like, my dad bought my mom a vacuum cleaner so that I'm making up stories here, but so that she could continue to vacuum, even though she had all of the muscle and lymph nodes removed from the right side of her body.
Unreal. It's like this. I remember a joke someone made one time, and I don't remember who it was, but they said, when mom's sick, and who's going to make dinner, right? So they did this meme where they had created some kind of a thing where they could prop their mom up at the stove, and her arm would be rotated like this so she could stir the soup or whatever it is, and so she could still make dinner because we can't go without, and heaven forbid we would have to cook for ourselves or order out or whatever. No, they made a way for her to be standing vertical and stirring. I thought, this is so ridiculous. And we're all going, yes, that is a man. That is a man. Look what he did.
Look what he did for you. I love that when I heard that. And it's so funny because I would love to show that, like do it like a video in a Relief Society meeting and show it in a priesthood meeting and then get the recap where we go, that's amazing. I'm going to go see if I can find my wife a new air fryer so that when she's cooking dinner for me, when I'm watching the football game, it's going to be so much easier for her. It never even occurred. I could do this. I could probably do this.
My mom had an iron right. And I used to watch her feed stuff into that thing. You would have to really make sure it was flat or it would iron a nice crease into whatever. They weren't that good. It wasn't that great of a machine. Yes, you could sit and use your knee, but it was still freaking hot. The steam was coming up and she'd be sweating. The drips of sweat would be coming down. She'd have to wipe her brow all the time and do this. And I'm like, is this actually a better thing? Like, anyway. And
it's funny you would say that because when they were showing that video and she was trying to, and I'm like, you're just ironing in that ball of fabric you just shoved in there. I saw that. Yeah.
You had to make sure it was very smooth before you fed that thing in any little sleeve or anything. Anyway, it's just funny to me that he saw that as a really great.
That's a real man. He sacrificed. And I just thought, here's the thing. I want to bring back all these women from the dead. And I want to go, when your husband bought you that iron machine, what were you really thinking? Were you like, okay, I'll keep ironing? Because, back in those days, little boys wore cotton button-down shirts to school, and they're, blue jeans, but they were ironed. And so there was a lot of, my mom used to iron. I remember my mom and this was in the 60s. I remember her hiring someone to do the ironing in the family.
For a lady, I got paid to iron for her. Yeah, they ironed pillowcases. They ironed jeans, they ironed t-shirts, everything was ironed.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I never iron, very rarely.
No, I don't either. I mean, I don't usually wear clothes that need to be ironed. I have my son and daughter-in-law, they both iron quite a bit, but they wear a lot of cotton button down type things, and I just wear a lot of workout gear basically. Even that should probably be ironed, but I just throw it on, it stretches, right? So yeah.
My husband and I, our very first big argument after we were married, he didn't like the way I ironed his white shirts. He worked at the MTC and his mother ironed it better than I was ironing it. And he was angry about that. And I said to him, well, you know what? If you don't like it, you can iron them yourself. And it just exploded at that point. And I said, I'm not your mother. I am not your hired shirt ironer. Other things to do. If you don't like how I do it yourself. And he was so angry at that thought. Well, the way it was fixed, we came to this agreement. He sent them out. He had a guy come pick them up and drop them off, and they were all ironed and beautiful. And I was like, thank you. That I can live with.
See, and this is what I love about you, because this is the difference between the victim and the person who accepts. They just accept the role that was given to them, because that's exactly. So push that a little bit further, because as the daughter of a general authority living in Utah, Mormon land, and having 7 children, brothers and sisters. And I know I've heard your story, about your brother that left the church and this kind of stuff. But you and your husband eventually said, this isn't working. I'm not doing this anymore. And so where were you in your marriage that you and your husband decided this isn't going to work? And to talk about, I listen to people who say, I could never leave the church because my mom and dad are, really strong members, and it would hurt them so much if I left. And, I still have kids that are in the church, and, I'm just going to keep quiet and do my duty and use an iron right and go to church on Sunday so I don't hurt anybody's feelings. You not only left the church, and I forget the timeline, so give me the timeline, but you left a marriage, which takes so much strength and guts. So talk about that little timeline.
Okay. So I'd been married 33 years. Wow. I was 52. Well, it was my 52nd birthday when I had this epitome or mental breakdown, whichever you want to call it, where I literally couldn't stop crying. I was just fetal position in bed crying all day on my 52nd birthday. And my husband's like, what is going on? What is wrong? And I was like, I don't know. I can't do this anymore. I could live another 30 years. I can't do it like this. Like, it just has this can't be my life.
Yeah.
It cannot be my life. And he was like, well, what's so bad about it? And I'm like, see, you don't see it. You don't get it. And I just was like, something's got to change, I didn't know what to do. And anyway, so long story short, I'll try to brief it, but the bishop got involved because he went to the bishop to tell him that his wife was, all of a sudden not wanting to be married anymore and all that. And then a month went by and the bishop called me in. And I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm going to get the lecture. I'm going to get the, hold hands and take long walks and blah, blah, blah. Go to dinner and all of those things that we had already done times 10. So I went in, and the bishop, I have to give cred to this bishop, because he literally looked at me and said, I've been praying about this. I've been praying about you for the last month, and I have a message for you from God. And I was like,
here it comes.
Those actual words said from a bishop to me before. So I was a little nervous. I thought, here comes the hammer, And he said, you've done enough. He said, Heavenly Father has seen your sacrifices and all the time and energy you have put into this, and the kids and the marriage and how it's been hard for you for decades. He said, the Lord said, you have sacrificed enough, and you have the door is open. I had never heard a bishop say something like that. My jaw was on the floor, and I was sobbing. I was like, I can't believe I'm hearing this, because that had been my prayer. My prayer was that at some point I would be freed. And
Right.
I was hoping someone would say something, because I didn't have the green light in my mind from the church. So it was going to have to just be me doing this. Well, the bishop basically just said, this is okay. And that's when I was like, okay, I can do this. I
Wow.
need to do this. So that's how it all started. And my husband, for the first time, was willing to listen to me, because we'd had a rocky marriage for 33 years and
Yeah.
got divorced many times. This time he listened to me. This time he didn't threaten me. And he said, if this is what you want to do, I'm not going to stand in your way. And it was
Do you think it took his priesthood authority giving you permission for him to accept it without a fight this time?
maybe, see, I don't know what the bishop said to him. I don't know if he ever had the conversation of, you need to let her go. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
He never told me that. And he tried to talk me into staying. We had lots more conversations where he was like, you don't have to do this. We could fix it this way or that way or this. And I was just absolutely done. I was at my wit's end. I was not going to be able to function any longer in that. There's a lot more to it that I'm not going to go into, but you have to trust me when I say I was at my wit's end.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't go any further. So when I left, I was still an active believing member. We got a divorce. We did it online. It was super easy, super congenial. There was no arguing. There was no lawyers. We didn't even have a mediator. We just literally did it online. It was
wow.
for me and $150 for him. And then we had the 90-day waiting period. And he helped me move. I stayed in the ward. I literally lived around the corner next door to my parents in my ward. They didn't even know we were divorced.
Oh my gosh. I remember that story, because your dad was older and he was kind of mentally a little bit frail. And you're like, why rock the boat right now? This isn't worth it. Yeah.
Well, and because my husband had promised up and down we would never get a divorce, because all my siblings had done it.
Isn't that something? All those siblings who also got married at 18 had 25,000 children, and it didn't work out. And I wonder what the statistic actually is for these little 18-year-olds.
Because I mean, the statistics for my family was terrible. I mean, it was the only one that hadn't gotten a divorce was my brother Dan, who had passed away.
He got his own divorce.
That was how that was his exit. They had a great marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And his wife. They were happily married, which is the only one. And then he died young at 46. So it was not good numbers in my family. And I don't really blame anyone. I just think we were unprepared. We were young. We just did the church thing, what you do. And sometimes they work. Sometimes you luck into the right guy or the right marriage. For me, it was hard. We were just different. Everything different.
What I think is remarkable though is at 52, you don't have a college degree, you don't have any work experience.
No,
that was not a part of the equation for you. You were like, I cannot live in unhappiness.
Yeah, it didn't matter. I figured this. I will find a way.
Yeah,
and I did. I got, I was doing design. I was doing fabric design at the time, but that wasn't enough to pay my bills. It's not really a lucrative career. It's like a career. It's like, unless you're Amy Butler. I mean, there are those people that make a
exactly. It's like all the singers that are now coming up with a makeup line and all this kind of stuff. You already have your fame. You're a famous interior designer, and now you're starting to design fabric as well, because you're already in with Scalamandre and Fabrica, all that stuff.
Right.
So
there are those people that make a ton doing it. Most of us make enough to be a nice side venue. So anyway, I thought, well, that company, I'm going to ask them to give me a job outside of fabric design. So I started working for them, literally like going into the warehouse and working. That's where I started. And, I've had other jobs since then, and I still would like to find my big career. I'm still
Yeah.
working at it, 62, almost
Yeah.
63.
Yeah.
I don't have a husband giving me money. I didn't win a bunch of money from our settlement. He
Yeah.
basically, like, it wasn't about the money. I didn't want to put him under. I didn't want to cause him financial stress.
Right.
So that wasn't my goal. Oh, I'm going to take him for all he's worth, man. I'm going to take him to the cleaners. I
Yeah.
know that was not. There
Right.
was animosity. No one had cheated on anyone. There was no scandal, you know?
Yeah.
So it was more like it just wasn't working. And both of us were unhappy. I think I
Right.
was more unhappy than he was.
Yeah.
But so after we divorced, then that's when I started to have my faith crisis.
Okay.
And then so I blew up my you call it blew up my marriage, basically, because everyone in my ward neighborhood, we're in freaking Orem, Utah,
Yeah.
thought that we had the best thing going.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, look at the
Did you hear the latest? Yeah.
And there was scandal. I know because the bishop told me there's Camp Hal and there's Camp Lila.
Oh.
And I was like, what? I mean, why? There's nothing going on. Like, you can't even say, well, this happened, she cheated, he cheated. There was none of that. So really, it was interesting to see how the ward handled that. But I just ignored all of that. I moved out of the ward pretty quick. Within 6 months, I moved out and went to Lehigh because it was just too incestuous there.
Yeah.
I could feel the tension, it was like, I gotta go. So, but I know to this day there are people that think I did something major.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. I'm not going to spend my time trying to convince people.
Right.
And then, the faith crisis came after. And that's when, I really lost friends.
Oh, isn't that funny? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you actually lost more friends with the faith crisis than you did, because now you've really lost your tribe, because before it was like your couple tribe, your family in the ward tribe. Now it's like, and I don't even believe this.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you went through that.
Yeah.
When you left the church. Didn't you lose? Were there people that were like, oh yeah, Renee?
Yeah. And I think, in fact, I was going through some drawers looking for something. I have an iPad somewhere and I can't find it. So I was going through drawers, and I found this little scrapbook that my girlfriends had made for me on my 40th birthday. We went to the beach. And so it was this fun little scrapbook. And then I found another little scrapbook of my girlfriend and I had driven all the way. She had moved to Ohio. And so we drove all the way down to Tennessee. And then we went out to visit a friend. So we had this little scrapbook. She cut me off faster. This is my friend I'd had for, 32 years, best friend, supposedly. I knew she wasn't really a best friend, because she was the type of friend that you would tell a secret that you thought you were telling your best friend. And then you'd go out with the third wheel, and the third wheel would say, well, so-and-so says that you're doing this. And I'm like, so I knew, and just sometimes the way she talked, but we had a lot of fun. We were together, but she actually texted my husband and said, I don't know how you're doing it. I feel so badly for you.
Oh dear.
And I was like, girl, we've been together for 32 years. I know all your secrets and where the bones are buried. And you don't need to be texting my husband, because your marriage sucks, and you temple recommend holders are the biggest facade liars I've ever known in my life. So, but no, they've all cut me off. They all cut me off, which let me know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I have two that have stayed friends with me.
Really?
But not really. Like, they're not how that used to be.
Yeah.
I had two women call me and say, talk to me about what's going on with you in the church and what's happening. And when I explained it to them, they were like, oh, yeah, I mean, you do have some points. I get it. And then radio silence after that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of have to create your own tribe.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I want to show another clip. I'm going to show this clip for a different reason. So let me find this. Let me see if I can.
Secrecy builds mistrust.
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't feel it's being secret. We feel it's being confidential.
What's the difference?
The difference is,
Yeah.
I guess it's a point of view.
Yeah. that's my favorite, and this is what I love about it. And I told my husband, I said, there's that little part where she goes, well, what's the difference? And he goes, well, and I have that little synced in my, well, he'll say something to me and I'll go, well, I don't think, and I have that little thing in my head. But that was my favorite part. It's like, well, we don't really call it secret. We call it confidential. And I was like, I am going to start using that. It's like, honey, those Amazon things, I don't really call them Amazon boxes. I call them gifts from Amazon. Because it's all vernacular, right? It's all just thematic. So
what's the difference? And a pause.
Yeah.
The pause is, oh my gosh, what am I going to say? What?
Yeah.
You? How's that?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But it just really talks about, I think the most infuriating thing for me is if you talk or listen to some podcasts of people who are very aware of the church history, they're aware of some of the cover-ups. And like you were saying, they're aware of things that we were taught as young moms and that they've changed now. They're aware of that, but they go, but you know what? This is who I am. This is how I was raised. And this is just, so it's like, well, okay, that works for you. But at least they admit that they acknowledge that these happen. But my biggest thing is when people go, that's not true. That's not true. Nobody ever did death ceremonies in the temple. Nobody slit their throat in the temple. Nobody ever said we can't talk about Heavenly Mother. Nobody ever told us we couldn't use birth control. Nobody ever said we had to have as many kids as we physically could. That's where my mind just, it's hard for me not to want to punch him in the throat.
Yeah.
If you accept it and you say, I still am going to attend, that's your own issue. Yeah. But when you deny that these things were taught.
That's gaslighting. That's just simple. It's like, no. You don't gaslight me. I was there. I took the covenants. I saw, I learned, we all heard, over the pulpit, we heard this. We've been taught. Don't deny it to me, especially, well, the younger ones, they don't know this.
They don't know it. And they believe the gaslighting.
Yeah.
I tried to download and it wouldn't let me download, but there's a clip that was taken off that the sister of Ruby Frankie is sitting on the floor and she's folding clothes. And first of all, it's driving me crazy because I'm watching her fold clothes and I'm like, girlfriend, stop that. She basically takes the little onesie the whole time she's talking. She takes a little onesie and she shakes it up and she folds it over and then she balls it up, puts it over there. Then she grabs another little onesie and she folds it over, folds it in half, balls it up and throws it up. I'm like, you're not folding. That's not right. So anyway, but she says, I really like the Salt Lake City Housewives of Salt Lake. And I really like Heather Gay. Her book is really good. You should read her book. And, but she just says things that aren't. Heather Gay is a housewife of Salt Lake. Yeah. And so she wrote the book Bad Mormon. Mm-hmm. And I didn't read it for a long time. Then I downloaded the audio version and it's actually really good. I really enjoyed it.
So I need to.
Yeah. But she said when Heather said that, that there were ceremonies in the temple where we slit our wrists and did a disembowelment ceremony if we said, and I just know that's not true. And it breaks my heart that she's spreading these lies. And I'm like, see, the fact that you don't know that it's true is scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You haven't done any homework. You have no idea what you're talking about. And now you're spreading more gaslighting.
Right.
So that people listen to you and think, yeah, it never happened.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Is it okay to mention another podcast that I just listened to?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
On your podcast. I'm sorry. I don't mean to deter.
No. Yeah.
I listened to a podcast this morning that as I'm driving got me so fired up. I'm yelling and screaming in my car. Like just, oh no. And just so angry. It was Jacob Hansen and Greg Mattson. And
was that Rebecca's Mormonish? And Steve. I know.
I want to say, what church are you living in? What are you talking about? They're saying, no. Polygamy is always a marriage of one man and one woman.
Yes. I thought if that's not gaslighting.
You're trying so hard to make this fit. You're finding a little teeny loophole in the verbiage and using that to say it's always one man and one woman, and that's always been.
Yes.
No, it's one man and all these women. No, they are all married at the same time, but it's still multiple. Oh my gosh.
I know. When he said that, it was like, when they get married, when they're standing there, it is one man and one woman. Therefore, it is not polygamy. It is always one man. Now, tomorrow, when he stands there with the next woman, it is still one woman and one man, which is what we teach today. Our doctrine has never changed.
Yeah.
It was the most word salad I'd ever heard.
And that's the part where Brigham Young, he was influenced by the culture. And I'm thinking, where's God? Is he not a prophet?
Yeah.
So what we were told is, it wasn't us. We weren't racist. This is God's law.
Yeah.
We don't know why. We don't know why blacks can't have the priesthood. It's God's law. When God changes it, fine, but we can't change it because it's God's law. And now they're trying to pawn it off on culture.
Yeah.
That it was the culture that caused it. Well, yeah, we know there was racism, but that's why we have a prophet. So that the prophet can say, well, God said this.
Yeah.
So they're switching the whole thing up now and blaming it on culture when we've been taught our whole lives that it was not culture, it was God.
Well, not only that, but I remember going to St. George and taking the little tour, and they're showing us the winery and why they call it Dixie. And because Brigham Young wanted to grow cotton, and she goes, but we didn't have slaves. I mean, of course, there were no slaves here. And I'm like, okay, girlfriend.
Oh my gosh.
Again, you're giving a tour to people
And you
probably aren't Mormons, and you don't even know your own church history.
Yeah.
And the fact that Brigham Young made Utah a slave state,
so that he could have slaves.
where there was the choice to not be a slave state. And so it's like, okay, there were slaves, and he was very anti-black, and he didn't want whites marrying blacks. And it was his little rant.
On the spot, a woman and a man, if they were black and white getting married, murder on the spot.
Yeah.
That is doctrine. And they say, oh, no doctrine has ever been changed. Only practices and principles, never doctrine. And I'm like, oh, like that Adam God doctrine?
Yeah.
That never changed?
Yeah.
Talk about the doctrines that have changed.
Yeah.
And they're just totally in denial about all of that. Anyway, I wanted to get on there and say all kinds of things, and Rebecca was being very respectful.
I know.
I thought, I don't know how you're doing that, girl. I don't know. Getting your
And that, if you watch, now we're going to talk about all the other podcasts, but that's okay. As long as I'm just telling you, you guys talk about me, and I would be more than happy to talk about you.
Quid pro quo.
Yeah, quid pro quo. But John DeLynn talked about Jacob Hansen's rant, and he handled it the way I would handle it, which was, you are full of baloney. Yeah. And I appreciated that. I really I have more of a John Larson personality, where you just want to call people out and just say no.
I do too, Renee. I'm right there with you.
So I can't do that. I love you. I'm just going to give you space for you to have your feelings. I can't do that. Yeah. I'm like, I don't know if I love you. I don't want to say I love you and I love my children and my grandchildren, my husband. Love is a special word. Yes. And when Jacob said at the end, I love John DeLynn, I'm like, you liar.
No, you don't.
Liar. You can't stand John DeLynn.
Yeah, you have disdain for the man. And the thing is, John DeLynn, when he goes on his rants, and he always apologizes. Sorry, Kathy.
I know.
I love his rants. I'm like,
I know. Me too.
Thank you for saying it and not dancing around and tiptoeing, because what we've been taught as Mormons also is that we need to be soft-spoken and kind and never say anything to rock the boat.
Exactly.
And that reminds me of the FLDS. Be sweet. What is it?
Yeah, sweet, pray, and
obey.
Yeah, obey. Yeah.
Thing here, we're not allowed to speak our minds if it's not like super sweet. Yeah. And I love it when people say, hell no, I'm going to lay it out right here for you. This is how it is. And this is what you're doing. And I'm not buying it. I love that.
Exactly.
And I just want that to happen more. I'm like, do it every time.
Yeah.
Someone's got to do it.
Exactly. I'm just really quick to close out our show. I just want to read a few more of these quotes.
These are
because fun. They are, they're, I mean, when they say, why did you do that? Or you had your choice. You had a choice. You could have found who you were. You could have stood up. I remember one time talking to a therapist, and honestly, it was like somebody had just told me that the world was flat. Okay. I said, I don't really want anybody to find out that I'm questioning the truthfulness of the church. I don't want the bishop to call me in his office. I don't want to have to explain all this. I'm just going to resign and go away.
Yeah.
And she said to me, why are you afraid that the bishop would ask you to come into his office and talk to him? And I said, well, because I don't want to go through, I don't want to have to prove, And she said, you could say no. And I'm like, you can say no?
I know, right?
Yeah. She said, yeah, if the bishop says, I'd like to talk to you, can you come over to my office? Or you can say no. And I was like, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could say no. I mean, and
I mean,
yeah,
they don't get it. People that
no.
say you could have done this or that, you could have made a choice. I want to say, you try being indoctrinated from the day you were born and
Exactly.
see what you think.
Yeah, exactly. And here's now this lady drives me nuts. This is, shoot. Let me see if I can. This is Bingham. Is it Bingham or something? She was a really excited president. She's the one that got on with, as we as women tend to be sometimes small or demanding or stubborn. When we ask the questions that the apostles asked of the Savior, is it he? That's a really good place. Oh, is it me? That's a really good place to start. That was the thing she had with, I don't know, I remember who was on the stage with her, but they were all talking about women and maybe we get a little shrill and we might be.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, remember that one? Maybe we need to go. Is it maybe I should be treating these men a little bit kinder? I should have more patience with them. And I'm like, oh, you poor indoctrinated cult person. Okay, so Boyd K. Packer. Now, this was for 100 years. As a young mother, I called Boyd K. Packer the sex apostle. And I just knew he was a grouchy old man. That's all he talked about was sex. Every conference, there was some morality talk. And he says the church's position on this issue, this was also equal rights, we cannot eliminate through any pattern of legislation or regulations the differences between men and women. A man, for instance, needs to feel protective and, yes, dominate, if you will, in leading his family. A woman needs to feel protected in the bearing of children and in the nurturing of them. I never felt protected. I was pretty much on my own. So I don't know about you.
Yeah.
And that's, and then this is my favorite. We may not always tell people what they want to hear. This is President Nelson. Prophets are rarely popular, but we always teach the truth. And then underneath that is a quote from Brigham Young. True, there is a curse upon the woman that is not upon the man, namely that her whole affection shall be towards her husband. And what is it next? He shall rule over you.
Yeah, so, they always preach the truth. See,
they only preach the truth.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
True.
So, I mean, that's what we've been, up against for our whole married lives. I was 20, almost 21 when we got married, but that was because my husband was on a mission. We couldn't get married. He'd already put his mission papers in. So, if he would have been a return missionary, I would have been married at 18.
Yeah.
I mean, when we met, it was like I'd already joined the Navy. I signed a contract. He had already put his mission papers in. We didn't really have a choice. So he went his way, I went mine, and we got married after he came home. That's the only reason why we didn't get married at 18. And if I would have told my mom I was getting married, she would have said, thank heavens, that's one less person I have to pay for. Because that was always, she would call me at work, Lila, and she would say, are you coming home for dinner tonight? And I'd say, no, I have to stay here till 8, Mom. And I said, why? She goes, well, I didn't know how many boxes of macaroni and cheese I should cook. And I'm like, I don't eat that much. I mean, I'm not eating a whole box. So did it really matter? But I mean, her whole thing was, get a job, pay for yourself, and please get out of my house so I don't have to pay for you anymore. So.
What number are you in the lineup of?
I'm basically an only child. I have an older brother that's 3 years older. Mm-hmm. And when we joined the church, I was 12, he was 15. And he immediately said, yeah, I'm not doing this, and went to live with my biological father.
Oh.
And then I have a younger brother that's my half brother from my mom's second marriage, and he's 8 years younger.
Okay.
So I was his babysitter.
Okay.
So yeah, so I was basically and the only girl. So I've always had my own room and never had to share anything, But my mom, because she was the 7th of 8 kids, and was born during the Depression and World War II and the whole bit. She was definitely like, it's me and me alone in this world, and you go do your own thing, because whatever I do is going to be for me. So, it's yeah. So it's kind of, that was kind of weird, but yeah. So I mean, I worked since I was 15 and paid for all my own stuff, and went into the Navy because nobody was going to pay for college for me. They're like, we're not giving you money for that, So I've always been independent. And like you, though, I feel like that's also gave me the because I had to do things by myself. I was always like, yeah, I didn't know any of this. This is all lying. You've lied to me all this time. And and then like I said, I had the 6 children. By the time by the time I grew up, and I was like, I really love interior design. I'm loving designing my little house. And I had 6 kids, one which was severely disabled.
Right.
And I remember having these panicky feelings because I was taking classes in interior design. And I knew that I had until 3:30 when that bus pulled up to get anything in the world that I exercise, go to lunch with friends, take some classes, study. You've got until the bus pulls up at 3:30, because then your life is back to taking care of everybody. And, so when I see these people, especially now with the online things, it's like, oh, I'm a Mormon, I have 8 kids, but I still run this really successful design business. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You either have nannies, housekeepers, somebody else, your husband, you have employees, you have all this team of people. You're not doing this on your own. And like you said, even when your kids are spaced out, you still had like a 10-year-old when you were like, I'm going to design textiles.
Yeah.
But I got this kid that's going to be home, or the school just called and he's sick and I got to go and get him,
Yeah.
So,
It's not, when people say you can have it all, there's something that has to go. You can't, or you have help.
Yeah.
It's really not possible to do a good job of all of these things at once without help, or something falls to the wayside, whether it's laundry and keeping your house clean or whatever.
Yeah.
Or your sleep or something.
Yeah.
It's just, there's only 24 hours,
Exactly. And it's all only human to be able to do so much. Well, this has been so great. And I just love having you. We are 2 peas in a pod. We are, we just think a lot alike.
Thank you for inviting me. I love your crown.
Thank you.
I love that you're getting the crystal energy into your
creativity, the whole thing. And I bought another one. Oh, this one has the carnelian.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'll have to figure out when I need to wear that crown, that my energy.
Like you said, get your own crown.
That's right.
We don't need to wait for someone to crown us.
That's right. It's going to be my new motto. Well, have a great day, and we will talk next week. Next week, Lila's going to be joining me. And for all of you, I am going to have Christy Johnson on. Go and watch the documentary. I can't remember if it was on Prime or Netflix, but it's a sin, not a crime, or a crime, not a sin. I can't remember. And I'll find that out. Anyway, she's going to be my guest. Amazing story. This is a strong woman who has suffered SA by her father, and the church just abandoned her mother, abandoned her sisters who were also abused. And it's a sad story, but it's a story of a woman who has stood up and become visible, very visible, and is also helping other people. So it's an amazing story. So join me next week on She Became Visible, where Lila and I will be talking with Christy. And have a great week. And thanks so much for joining us today. All right. Bye-bye. See you all next week. And we will be, remember, it's at She Became Visible 513 on YouTube. And I appreciate you joining me. It's been a great conversation with Lila. So thanks again. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today on She Became Visible. Join me each week as my guest